Miami receivers coach Kevin Beard is putting in that work on the recruiting trail. Miami has just been crystal balled to land one of my favorite targets in the class of 2025.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And I know a crystal ball is not the same as a verbal commitment, which is not the same as signing a national letter of intent. But still, I like the way Miami is trending with this player and with a handful of others that we're going to talk about. I'm Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. We're free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around that next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. So before I tell you who that player is, some of you may already know, let me introduce the Truth Teller. It's a Truth Teller Tuesday on a Thursday. This daylight savings just threw off my whole schedule this week. Bruce Warner, how are you?
I'm doing good. We were supposed to be on yesterday with KC Jones, but KC texted me right before the show, and he says, I have a leak. And then he sent me a picture on the text of a ceiling with water spots everywhere, so I guess the plumber was coming in. So he wants to come back next week.
We'll get him on. We'll get him on. KC Jones, for my money, best Miami Hurricanes center of all time. We've had some good ones. We'll talk to him next week. But so Bruce, the player he earned 2 crystal ball predictions to Miami yesterday. Tom Loy, who's a national 24/7 sports writer. Gabby Urrutia, buddy of mine who locally here for 24/7 Sports at Inside the U, have logged crystal ball predictions for Miami to land 4-star wide receiver out of Homestead, Cortez Mills.
Yes.
Bruce, this is one of my favorite. Yeah, I mean, listen, obviously 4-star receivers, that's a blue chipper. I think Cortez is the type who, based on the way he's performing in 7-on-7s, he might end up getting that 5th star at some point. He's got an insane catch radius for 6'1". He's got a crazy wingspan, great at jump balls, putting in one-handed grabs. He's really quick. Miami, Bruce, has done pretty well these last couple of years bringing in receivers. And if they can bring in Cortez, this is going to be a big one to add to the room next year.
I agree, and they have to keep adding these type of players. The Jeremiah Smiths come along once every 10 years probably. But guys like this are still damn good. If you look at this year's draft, you got about 5 or 6 receivers that are potential first-round picks, even a few of them going in the first 10 picks in this draft. So, but yeah, Miami needs to keep loading up. And I think Kevin Beard is doing a great job. And that was a name that I said, I mentioned it along with, of course, Lamar, but Kevin Beard is doing a hell of a job. And he's a great person. And that's another thing. He's just a great person. He's not a bragger. He doesn't BS the parents or these kids. He's just a great low-key communicator. And I think he needs this year now on the field is what we care about.
Right.
So we need to see Isaiah Horton step up. We've seen some other guys that are improving in the offseason, Ray, and everybody is all excited about
JoJo,
and our other receiver,
Nikar.
Now, and they're showing the first week of practice how good they are. Wait till he gets a hold of them, the rest of the season and the offseason. So, yeah, I think that's very important, and I'm thrilled about it. And I've been watching some of these shows. I've watched your shows. The offense seems pretty locked on. Now, I'm a little worried about the running backs. I also hear they may be in line to get somebody in the portal again.
Right.
Because of lack of experience. But I think the whole onus of this team is going to be on the defense because that's where I look at every area that could be a possible problem, mostly on the defense. I don't want to take away from what you want to talk about today, but to me, that's just glaring right now.
No, I mean, we can
you
hop
made
on
a comment
this.
to me off the air. You can bring it up right now while we're talking about the defense.
Well, I'm not even sure which comment you're referring to, but I do think they look somewhat thin right now at defensive back. Right? Where
what I'm talking about. You want
yeah.
to
so
bring that up? Go ahead.
At one point, last week, and there's guys who aren't practicing yet, like Damari Brown. I think he might debut next week. He missed the first week of spring practice. Mario Cristobal mentioned him as a guy who may be recovered to come back next week. I'm not sure about Robert Stafford. I think he was limited last week. I didn't see him out there. So the cornerback room has been really thin. Thankfully, we still have Daryl Porter Jr., who's kind of setting the tone for that room. And Jadis Richard is doing pretty well, Bruce, but he hasn't proven a whole lot on the field. And then, in the safety room, really the guy who's obviously proven the most is the one who came over from Washington, Mish Powell. Right. And so outside of that, but he's probably going to play nickel this year, actually. So you're looking at maybe Savion Riley and Jaden Harris as your starting safeties this year. Spring. He's having a good spring. Not a lot of experience, though. Right. So I have to wonder if defensive back, maybe cornerback and safety is a spot Miami looks to bring in a guy.
Well, as I said, you mentioned the guy before the show started, somebody that went to Colorado that should have been here.
So there's a rumor.
Do you want to bring it up?
Let's bring it up. Let's bring it up now.
Or do we just tease everybody and then we drop it?
No, I say we bring it up now. Okay. So again, this has been all over the message boards. I saw it at the Canes Insight message board. That there is a strong rumor, and this actually started, I think, from Colorado people, and now it's circulating nationwide. That I don't know the circumstances behind it, but that Cormani McClain may be off the team now. That he's not been working out with Colorado. He's been back home in the state of Florida. Some people say he's actually checked out Florida State already, which, by the way, might be tampering if he's not in the portal right now.
Yeah, I'll take a wild guess, not that I want to commit slander, but maybe somebody like a parent is trying to negotiate a deal for him. Because it wouldn't shock me in the least, because that whole thing was screwed up, and his mother was very heavily involved.
So, the $1 million question to you is, if Cormani McClain, and we all know the story, he was supposed to be in Miami's class of 2023, didn't show up to his National Signing Day ceremony, and ended up flipping the call. It was a whole disaster. And he'd already, he had shocked everybody at his original verbal commitment ceremony. Everybody thought he was going to pick Florida. He picked Miami. Then he left Miami at the altar. He had concerns at college. I mean, Deion Sanders called him out for having immaturity issues last year at Colorado. Like, that may have something to do why he's not on the team right now, Bruce. So my question to you is, if Cormani McClain did come available, would you want him at Miami?
I can't answer that, but I can answer. I would talk to him. I'd sit him down with Mario, let Mario grill his ass and see if he thinks he's playing games or he's serious. Yeah. I don't know what he did last year. I haven't looked at his stats. I don't know how often he played.
He had some good and some bad. Like there were a couple games where I watched him getting torched, a couple games where I watched him actually making plays and looking really good. So, he was a true freshman last year. So inconsistencies, some good and some bad.
Right. And so I look at it, I bring him in. Would I want him there? Only if, and I trust Mario's judgment, only if Mario says, okay, I gave this kid a lecture and he wants to come here. And I said, okay, my gut tells me he's going to wind up in Tallahassee. That's just their pattern. They bring in these guys, and if he fails, he fails. But I think they're going to spend money on the kid. They're desperate.
What you said about, Cristobal and vetting him, you're not wrong, obviously. But based on all the information I have about McClain dating back to, the last year and a half, 2 years since we've been covering him on this show, or since we used to cover him on the show, I would say no, just based on the information that I have. I mean, just looking at the type of players they're trying to recruit. Initially, they made an exception for him because he was the top corner in the class, 5-star, but he burned like 7 bridges since they initially made an exception for him.
I can't disagree with that. I can't disagree with that. I just think maybe if he vetted him, but Mario maybe. Yeah. I don't have any interest in this kid. I don't like his work ethic. I don't like what he did to us last year. Screw him. Let him go to Tallahassee. I'd hate to see it.
Yeah.
But then again, you know what? This kid may be a bust.
Yeah, he might be.
He might well be a bust.
Yeah. I mean, if he's that talented and he can't take football seriously, like he's trending towards the bust direction. Now he's like 19 years old. It's not too late to turn it around, but if he's not taking the work ethic part of it seriously, that's not a recipe for success at this level. You can get away with it in high school, not in Power 5.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I was alluding to. Willie Williams, who was 25 years ago. I remember they had a big court hearing, and my friend Judge Kaplan, who was a Cane, he led him into Miami. They gave him, he said, okay, you can go. He had all these criminal things. And he comes to Miami. He really didn't get any better.
No,
he was so talented that when he was in high school, whatever he wanted to do, take bad angles, it didn't matter. And so he became a bust.
Yeah.
And this kid's heading in the same direction. He just looks like he's a little mama's boy, and mom is parading him around, and he goes out to Colorado, which I don't think he should have been there in the first place.
No.
I mean, that's not a place for a kid from Florida.
He wanted to be a reality TV star. He wanted to be part of the whole, because Deion Sanders was just like he had his gravitational pull, and Cormani wanted to be a part of that.
Yep. And he went for all the wrong reasons, probably. The kid needs structure and he needs discipline. And I don't know what kind of discipline they have out there, but it seems like Deion's not disciplined. He says and does what he wants. Anyway, let's get back to what's really
a couple of other players that are trending in Miami's direction. In addition to Cortez Mills, it seems like first round of spring practices and some of the visits Miami had last week have been very productive behind the scenes. So we'll get to all of that, my friends. We got the truth teller with us here on a Thursday. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Keep it locked. And I'm only getting started with Nissan. My friends, this week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it farther than the rest. Just like any of the all-new Nissan SUVs in 2024, these guys were able to take it to the next level. The Utah State Aggies are obviously this week's Nissan Rogue. The team absolutely surprised us with a powerful performance against New Mexico, giving them their first outright Mountain West title in program history. They say win life, go Rogue, and that's exactly what the Aggies have done here. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. Thank you so much for making this Truth Teller Thursday episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Hey, mark your calendar for the Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown Show this coming Monday, March 18th at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. Experts Andy Patton and Isaac Shade will break down their brackets and discuss everything that you need to know to fill out a winning bracket and prepare for this year's NCAA tournament. Find the Locked On Bracket Breakdown on Monday, March 18th on the Locked On College Basketball Podcast or wherever you get your pods. All right, we got the truth teller, Bruce Warner, with us here on Locked On Canes.
Hey, one thing's for certain. They don't have to worry about where they're going to put Miami.
That's true.
they're
How's that NIT bracket looking?
Wow, they look bad.
That was depressing. They finished the season 10 straight loss. I was about to say 9, but the Boston College one was the 10th straight loss. I mean, Bruce, I remember a year ago at this time, we were actually able to talk some basketball. They ended up having a Final Four run. Now we're breaking down the week off during spring football is where we're at now.
I spoke to you about a month or so ago, and I said, I think I'm going to call Rick Barry. I know Rick.
Yeah.
And I get him on, and he's older now, but he's still a legend, and he's very opinionated. I should try to get him on now with his opinion, because everybody's talking about Coach L. I think he'll be back, but they have homework to do. They need a big guy in the middle, somebody who could score on the inside, because their game is all the same kind of players, But that's enough about basketball.
So I can also remember, when you and I over the past, year plus talking recruiting, you always used to ask me, where are the defensive tackles? Now that was before Miami landed, Justin Scott and Artavius Jones and Armando Blunt last year.
Yeah.
And now the Hurricanes, Bruce, are trending for another really good one. So he already had a 24/7 crystal ball to Miami. He's now got an RPM prediction from On3 Sports from our friends at Kane Sport to land at Miami, and that's Randy Adirika.
Yes.
Really solid 4-star defensive lineman out of Miami Central. And it's not all, because Bruce, Miami is also trying to get the other Central defensive tackle, a kid who he moved down here from Alabama by way of Canada in Bucard. So Miami's trying to land both of the top Miami Central guys, and why not, after landing Ruben Bain and Armando Blunt in consecutive years, continuing to build that pipeline with these top defensive linemen from Miami Central.
Yeah, and I think that all this talk about Mario having to win and how many games does he have to win, But if you take a step back, which is hard to do because we're so involved, he really lacks experience at a lot of these positions. You mentioned it before in the defensive backfield. They lack experience. But the names that are on these jerseys on offense and defense, pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive. And I think, with the quarterbacks, then you got Nickel coming in the year after. He's loading this up. And if they get Mills, then they're because they're going to lose. Who did they lose this year? Who's a senior? Restrepo. George.
Yeah.
George is senior.
I think George is a senior as well. Yeah.
Right. So they have to keep this going. And that's what it takes to keep winning. Not that you have one star and then you don't get another star receiver for 5 more seasons. He's got the blueprint. I still think we should win. We should win 10 games this year. I don't know about you, but I know everybody listening and watching is sick and tired of losing to these crap teams. Yeah. We have no business even being on the field with these teams. And I like to see us just blow out the Gators and just keep it going, even if we lose to Florida State again or whatever. But we need to win to keep some of these recruits, and we have to build momentum. 6-6 or 7-5 is just oh my God, I don't know if my heart could take it any longer.
Yeah, especially with the caliber players that Miami is trying to land and trending with. Another one who's strongly trending in Miami's direction and kind of like Cortez Mills. This is a local player, really important for Miami to land, and that's Chris Ewald, the defensive back out of Chaminade. I think it works in Miami's favor. They're throwing the kitchen sink at him with his recruitment. Miami's been all over this young man even before he decommitted from Michigan because he was committed there for a while. Yes. And it also works in Miami's favor. He's close with Zaquan Patterson, obviously his former teammate at Chaminade, who's at Miami now. And Zaquan is one who's looked good so far in spring practice. So I think Ewald, and he's got to be looking at that cornerback room and saying, hey, a year from now, I can get in there and I can get on the field.
Yes. And, you mentioned you spoke to on your show, you had Jaden Bell on.
Jalen Hollywood Bell. Yeah, I like him as well. I love him.
And I talked to his father last night.
That's awesome.
Because I told you, but he's Mark Caesar's cousin, the kid.
Yeah, and I didn't know. I wish I'd known that when I spoke to him, and then I messaged Jalen about it afterwards, and we were talking about it last night. But I didn't know when I interviewed him that he and Mark Caesar were related. Yeah,
so Mark called me with his father last night, and the father loves Miami. The kid had a great visit.
Yeah, he did.
He decommitted from LSU, and that's now out of the picture. So this kid thinks he could start. I mean, he's a little underweight, 160 pounds or something like that. But he's supposed to be one hell of a ball hawk.
He wants to play nickel, he told me. That's where he wants to play.
He wants to start right away. And I don't know if that's going to happen, but you know what? I like his attitude. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
So and this is whatever. I asked him if he would announce on our show, and he said he'll talk to his son.
Let's do it.
But you know what? But what my proposal was before he goes in the gym and he tells people in the gym, he could do our show because we don't have that kind of a national audience or whatever. So that's I asked him. So we could do that. We could break. Obviously, if he's going to do it on our show, he's picking Miami.
I would hope so.
If he picks another school, we just cut him off.
Yeah, right. Exactly. If he came out, I think the only other, because I asked him about the schools that he's most interested in so far, and the only other school in the state of Florida that he really likes is actually UCF. Right. So they're in the mix for him, and there's some SEC schools in the mix for him, West Virginia in the mix for him. So hopefully, if he came on here and picked UCF, we'd have a cow.
Listen, Mark already told him, go down there, and if you have any problems, call Bruce.
That's right.
Mark told him how many times I bailed his ass out of jail. But he's a good kid. He won't be. He's a great kid. And the thing, and for those, if anyone missed that interview, it's on our YouTube channel with Jalen Hollywood Bell. That's his great nickname for a defensive back. He sounds like a team leader in the making. I'm sure he's a team leader there at Grayson, which is a powerhouse program in Georgia. Just student of the game. Really well spoken, because you never know when you bring on a 17-year-old for an interview, you never know, are you going to get one-word answers and stuff? Right. Not from this guy. Extremely polished and well spoken. And his father is a DB coach.
Yeah.
So this kid, he's learned things that some of these kids in high school have never learned yet.
Yep.
He's ahead of the curve. He reads. You can see. He watches film. He reads. I think if we get him, he's good. I don't care how many stars he's got. What does he have? 3?
He's got four on Rivals. He's got
Right.
4 on Rivals, 3 on 24/7.
He'll be 4 by the time he gets out of that school.
Yeah, I would think so as well. Well, a couple of important things I want to talk about when we come back. So I want to get Bruce's take, and I'll give you mine as well, on a few players that I'd like to see really step up in the second week of spring football. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't step up in the first week, but I need to see continued progress here. And I got to at least bring it up, folks. The ACC and the Big 12, they're getting hosed. New college football playoff revenue deal. The gap between what we now refer to as the Power Two, the SEC and the Big 10 versus the Big 12 and the ACC, that revenue gap is only getting wider and, quite frankly, getting more embarrassing for people like myself who cheer for an ACC school. So, folks, we are not done yet. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. And I know you're keeping it locked to Fire TV. I'm so glad that Fire TV is on board here at the Locked On Network. I've been using this for years. It is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. And that includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college leagues as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this one. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. And we are also proudly brought to you on this episode by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and take home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Bruce, there are a few players that I don't know for sure if it's going to be next week, but players who were not active or limited in the first week of spring practice, coming off some injuries. There's guys nursing major stuff like Mark Fletcher, but there's some other guys nursing minor stuff that could be back this week. I'm hoping we get to see Akeem Mesidor, who we didn't see a lot last year. Yeah. I'm hoping we get to see more of Josh Horton, right? Because again, we're talking defensive tackles. That dude is over 300 pounds now heading into his second year. Like Josh Horton.
And he's not on my list for the question that you were asking.
Oh, yeah?
He's clearly on my list. He was there last year.
Yeah.
As opposed to Justin Scott, who's just coming in or will be coming in.
Right.
This kid has been there, and, he's up 300 pounds. And we need this kid to step up. I don't mean to interrupt on what you were talking about, but if it flows right in, Josh Horton is the guy that I want to see step it up. And you got the two transfer guys are on, what are they, second team?
Right, yeah.
I'm not lighting anything up, that's for sure.
Yeah, it seemed like from the days, I had to miss Friday, but when I was out there Monday and Wednesday, it looked like Jared Harrison Hunt and Thomas Gore were getting a lot of like the most prominent reps. But I always throw this out there, Bruce, because this is reality. You cannot read too much into the first couple spring practice in terms of depth chart. Like you cannot look at the first couple days and say, yep, Lou Cristobal Jr. is your starting left guard. Like you can't jump to conclusions like that, because they rotate a lot of guys, and there are other reasons why players may not be getting prominent reps, because guys could be nursing minor injuries and stuff. But yeah, I definitely want to see more from the transfer D tackles as well, Bruce, since you brought that up.
But
because I
normally
think that's
what they've
important.
done in the past, and it kind of like, I used to think, like, what are they, out of their minds? The guys that did well in the training room in the offseason were the ones who got to start the first week, even if they didn't deserve to be. That's
Right.
what they used for like 30 years. They did that. So that
Yeah.
could be the same principle,
Yeah.
because Mario was involved with that back in the 80s. So I think it's very possible that that's why some of these guys are in there, because what they did in the offseason weight training program.
I think that is why certain players started in the bowl game that people were surprised about. And
Right.
obviously there were a lot of players not available for the bowl game, but I think there were some surprises in the starting lineup, and it had a lot to do with the way they practiced during that break. Because Cristobal does like to reward merit. So you always want, like, your physically most gifted players, you want them to also practice as hard or harder than everyone else, right? To earn that. That goes back to the whole Cormani McClain thing, if that's not something he was doing at Colorado.
Probably not. Now, we mentioned Horton, who I think is very important. I think now, did you mention, is Stafford hurt?
Yeah, he's
He didn't play
he's
this year.
nursing
How the hell
something.
did he get hurt?
I don't
What
know.
did he do? Tripped over a popsicle stick? I mean, come on.
Are you really asking me if I know the inside stories to Miami injuries when they keep that stuff more secret than the CIA? Like, what do I know? I didn't see him out there last week.
That's my point. He must be hurt, but that's a kid who I think should be stepping up. We really fought for this kid. He's a 4-star. I want to see what he can do.
I have heard good things about him from off-season workouts. So again, I don't know why I didn't see him in practice last Monday and Wednesday. I don't know why, but I think he's hopefully ready to step up. And Damari Brown, I don't know if I mentioned him already, but Damari Brown, to me, Cristobal specifically mentioned him as one of the guys who should be good to go at some point during spring practice. Now that they've had
undisclosed injury, and undisclosed, that's worse than not. It's a knee, it's an ankle. Nobody knows what happened.
Could be a hangnail. Maybe it's not that serious.
That could be. That would keep McClain out for at least a season. but the point is this: you've got some talent there, but they're not experienced. And then when they miss time, that really hurts. We need both of those guys to compete hard. I'm not sold on Richard's speed. I just watched him last year get turned around and twisted, and I'm not sold on him. And when he's a Vanderbilt transfer, I don't know.
They got a couple of Vanderbilt transfers. Richard, who's actually
right?
He's I've heard Richard's doing very well. Like, a couple of players told me off the record, not just on the record, that he's doing really well. So I'm hoping that this is a breakout year for him. They also have another Vanderbilt guy, is Savion Riley at safety, who could end up being a starting safety. So hopefully he does well. Now, Bruce, I feel like you're in a different part of the legal field, but since you are a lawyer, can you help Miami get out of this ACC? Like, can you do something? Can you just speed up this process? Can you help us get into the Big Ten or the SEC? Because the newest thing now, and I wrote about it this morning at allhurricanes.com. I'm surprised at how easily the ACC and the Big 12 just laid down and allowed this to happen.
Yep.
So they're about to approve a new revenue split for the college football playoff, right? You got 12 teams now. They're cutting a new TV contract with ESPN. And the way that it used to be, Bruce, was for the college football playoff, the formerly Power 5 conferences would basically split an even share of revenue between the five.
Yes.
Now the Big Ten and the SEC, they have all the leverage now that they've turned into mega conferences, and they could threaten to leave the NCAA anytime they wanted to. So they're steamrolling everybody else. So this new proposal that is expected to pass, according to Ross Dellinger from Yahoo Sports, is that now the Big Ten and the SEC would combine to earn 58% of the revenue distribution, and the Big 12 and the ACC would share 32%, with Notre Dame and other schools sharing the remaining 10%. But so if the percentages don't mean much to people out there, think of it this way. According to the estimate on the TV deal, the revenue gap between the SEC and the Big 10 versus the ACC and the Big 12 would be a $300 million difference.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of millions. It's a lot of dollars.
How come we weren't involved in that? We've expanded. We brought in Stanford and Cal. What the hell's going on? I mean, I'm
not sure. Bringing in the teams we brought in might have made us worse, not better. Like, it's talking about Stanford and Cal. I mean, SMU, I think, is kind of an up and coming program, but Stanford and Cal probably made us worse.
Should have brought in maybe Oklahoma State. There's teams that are out there that are better than them.
Really should have made a push to bring in, schools that ended up in the Big Ten. Like I would have loved to have had Washington and Oregon, because they were talking about that before they wound up in the Big Ten. But before that happened, there was some chatter that they might end up in the ACC. That would have been so much better than Cal and Stanford.
Well, that's obvious. And I think getting out of the conference now, like Florida State's trying to do, and Clemson is filing their paperwork to go where, I don't know. But if you got in those conferences, I don't know if you get grandfathered in or you'd still be stuck with the lower percentage. I don't know.
Right.
That's a damn good question. I would like to think that if they're luring us into the Big 12, that we'd be a part of that $300 million share. But do you really want to play in the Big 12?
Or the Big Ten, you mean?
Big Ten, yeah. Do you really want to go up there and play in that weather?
Well, here's the thing, and actually, like I think it was I've had this conversation a long time ago with our mutual friend Gary Furman at Kane Sport, and I remember him bringing something up that is there a path to actually thriving in a lesser conference, that if Miami were to stick around in like a diminished ACC, you do have 12 playoff spots available now. So you could conceive there is a path to get into the playoffs. And instead of being one of 20 teams in the Big Ten and having to play in Minnesota in November and stuff like that, and in Ohio, and like you could try to win the AC. And this is assuming Florida State leaves somewhere else. So Miami would be in more of a position of power. But you try to win the ACC every year, get into you could be the big fish in the small pond. The problem I have with that idea is you need to make up the revenue gap somewhere. Like, are there billionaires out there who are just going to step up and donate even more money to the athletic program? Because you're missing out on all this TV money that you would get extra in the SEC or Big Ten.
The TV money. I mean, who wants to be like Rutgers? They're in the Big Ten. What do? They do nothing. They just compete.
No, they beat us.
They take a percentage. Yeah, they beat us. They take a percentage of it, and that's how they are. They're just an average football team, and their basketball team is below average this year.
Yeah.
But I don't want to compete up there. I just don't. I just don't. I just don't see where it would be advantageous to us, because we won't be in the playoffs. We won't be in the playoffs. I'd rather stay in the ACC and be still a national team, win the conference quite often, and maybe because we're Miami, we're not Rutgers, or we're not in the middle of Oklahoma, we're in Stillwater. We're Miami, we could win the ACC and still be a national power. Right. I don't know if you're going to be a national power playing in the SEC or the Big Ten. I don't see it.
It's something to ponder. Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to our channel. If you're listening to the audio version, you can find us Locked On Canes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, every audio platform where you get your pods. Make sure to rate the show 5 stars. Leave us a 5-star review if you'd like to. He is the truth teller, Bruce Warner. Bruce, awesome job. We'll see you again next week, and maybe KC will fix his plumbing by then.
Well, KC will be on there. He wants to be on. We could do another show because we already know Ja'Cory Harris is coming on.
That's right. Ja'Cory's coming on next. I'm excited for that.
He's on a cruise right now, but he texted me. He says, I'll be there Tuesday, Bruce.
Does he go? I feel like every time we try to get Ja'Cory on, he's on a cruise. Like, how many cruises this guy go on?
What does he care?
He's living the life.
Hey, look, he texted me. He said, Bruce, I can't make it 2 days ago.
Yeah,
I'm coming back from my cruise. I'll be on next Tuesday at 10 in the morning.
That's so awesome.
And then we'll get Casey Jones on. And I said the week after, I haven't locked it in yet, but I'm working on Jeremy Shockey. So we'll see.
I love it. We will talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.